Chapter 5. Loss of a Man. Monday, November 19th. This was a black day in our calendar. At 7 o'clock in the morning, it being our watch below, we were aroused from a sound sleep by the cry of "All hands ahoy! A man overboard!" Hurrying on deck, we found the vessel hull flat back, with all her studding sails set. The watch on deck were lowering away the quarter boat, and I got on deck just in time to fling myself into her as she was leaving the side. But it was not until upon the wide Pacific in our little boat that I knew whom we had lost. It was George Balmer, the young English sailor, whom I have before spoken of as the life of the crew. He was prized by the officers as an active and willing seaman, and by the men as a lively, hearty fellow and a good shipmate. He was going aloft to fit a strap round the main topmast head for ringtail halyards, and at the strap and block a coil of halyards and a marline spike about his neck. He fell at not knowing how to swim, and being heavily dressed, with all those things round his neck, he probably sank immediately. He pulled astern in the direction in which he fell, and though we knew that there was no hope of saving him, yet no one wished to speak of returning. We rowed about for nearly an hour, without an idea of doing anything, but unwilling to acknowledge to ourselves that we must give him up. At length we turned at boat's head and made towards the brig. Death is at times solemn, but never so much as at sea. A man dies on shore, his body remains with his friends, and the mourners go about the streets. But when a man falls overboard at sea and is lost, there is a suddenness in the event, and a difficulty in realizing it, which give it to an air of awful mystery. A man dies on shore, you follow his body to the grave, and a stone marks the spot. You are often prepared for the event, but at sea, the man is near you, at your side. You hear his voice, and in an instant he is gone, and nothing but a vacancy shows his loss. Then, too, at sea you miss a man so much. A dozen men are shut up together in a little bark upon the wide sea, and for months and months see no forms and hear no voices but their own, and one is taken suddenly from among them, and they miss him at every turn. It is like losing a limb. There are no new faces or new scenes to fill up the gap. There is always an empty berth in the forecastle, and one man wanting when the small night watch is mustered. There is one less to take the wheel, and one less to lay with you upon the yard. All these things make such a death peculiarly solemn, and the effect of it remains upon the crew for some time. There is more kindness shown by the officer to the crew, and the crew to one another. There is more quietness and seriousness. The oath and the loud laugh are gone. The officers are more watchful, and the crew go more carefully aloft. The lost man is seldom mentioned, and is dismissed with a sailor's rude eulogy. Well, poor George is gone. His cruise is up soon. He knew his work and did his duty, and was a good shipmate. Eulogy. Then usually follows some allusion to another world. For sailors are almost all believers in their way, though their notions and options are unfixed at loose ends. They say, God won't be hard upon the poor fellow, and seldom get beyond the common phrase which seems to imply that their suffering and hard treatment are well passed to their credit in the books of the great captain hereafter. To work hard, live hard, die hard, and go to hell after all would be hard indeed. Not long after we had returned on board with our sad report, an auction was held off the poor man's effects. The laws regulating navigation make the captain answerable for the effects of a sailor who dies during the voyage. It is either a law or a custom that the captain should soon hold an auction of his things, in which they a bid are bid off by the sailors, and the sums which they give are deducted from their wages at the end of the voyage. In this way, the trouble and risk of keeping his things through the voyage are avoided, and the clothes are usually sold for more than they would be worth on shore. Accordingly, we had no sooner got the ship before the wind than his chest was brought up upon the forecastle, and the sail began. The jackets and the trousers in which we had seen him dressed so lately were exposed and bit off, with the life was hardly out of his body. His chest was taken out and used as a store chest, so that there was nothing left which could be called his. As is usual after a death, many stories were told about George. Some had heard him say that he had repented never having learned to swim, and that he knew that he should meet his death by drowning. Another said that he never knew any good to come of a voyage made against the will, and the deceased man shipped and spent his advance, and was afterwards very unwilling to go, but not being able to refund, was obligated to sail with us. A boy too, who had become quite attached to him, said that George talked to him during most of the watch on the night before about his mother and family at home, and this was the first time that he had mentioned the subject during the voyage. The night after the event, when I went to the galley to get a light, I found the cook inclined to be talkative, so I sat down on the spars and gave him the opportunity to hold a yarn. He was full of superstitions once common among seamen, and which the recent death had waked up in his mind. He said he believed few men died without having a warning of it, which he supported by a great many stories of dreams, and of unusual behavior of men before their death. For this he went on to other superstitions. At length he put his head out of the galley and looked carefully about to see if anyone was within hearing, and asked me in a low tone, "I say, you know that countryman's carpenter be?" "Yeah," said I. "He's a German." "I'm plaguey glad of that," said the cook. "I was mighty afraid he was a Finn." He was fully possessed with the notion that Finns are wizards, and especially have power over the winds and storms. I tried to reason with him about it, but he had the best of arguments, that from experience, and was not to be moved. He had been to the Sandwich Islands in a vessel in which the sailmaker was a Finn, and could do anything he was of a mind to. This sailmaker kept a junk bottle in his berth, which was always just full of rum. always half full of rum, though he got drunk upon it nearly every day. The same man cut his throat in his berth, and everybody said that he was possessed. He had heard of ships to beating up the Gulf of Finland against the headwind, and having a ship heave in sight astern, overhaul and pass them, with as fair a wind as could blow, and all studding sails out, and find she was from Finland. As I still doubted, he said he would leave it to John, who was the oldest seaman aboard. John, to be sure, was the oldest, and at the same time the most ignorant man in the ship. The cook stated the matter to him, and John sided with the cook, and said that he himself had been in a ship where they had a headwind for a fortnight. The captain found out at last that one of the men, with whom he had had some hard words a short time before, was a Finn, and immediately told him if he didn't stop the headwind he would shut him down in the forepeak. The Finn would not give in, and the captain shut him down in the forepeak, and would not give him anything to eat. The Finn held out for a day and a half, when he could not stand it any longer, and did something or other which brought the wind round again, and they let him up. "There," said the cook. "What do you think about that?" I told him I had no doubt it was true, and that it would have been odd if the wind had not changed in 15 days, Finn or Norfin. "Oh," says he, "go away. You think 'cause you've been to college, you know better than anybody. You know better than them as in seen it with their own eyes. You wait till you've been at sea as long as I have, and then you'll know."